Put them down! Put the phone down now!
Do you understand the implications of your actions?
Rain hit the pavement in cold, rhythmic slaps, soaking the city's morning rush. Officer Blake Turner stood beside his patrol car, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers, eyes narrowed at the woman he'd just ordered to step out of her vehicle. License and registration, he barked. The woman, early 30s, dark-skinned, sharp suit pressed despite the rain, handed over her documents. Her hands didn't shake, but her voice caught slightly. "Officer, is there a reason I was stopped?" Blake smirked. "Plenty of stolen vehicles in this area. You fit the description." Her jaw tightened. "I fit the description." He leaned closer, the word criminal dragging from his mouth like a slur. "Yeah, don't play smart." A crowd had gathered, phones raised, eyes wide. The woman's calm began to fracture under the weight of humiliation. She stood there, drenched, silent, her dignity stripped by his tone, by the laughter of his partner inside the cruiser. Finally, Blake tossed her license back into her hands. "Next time, drive like you belong here." She caught it midair. Her eyes didn't leave his face. "Oh, I belong," she said, voice low, controlled. "You'll remember me, Officer Turner." Later that afternoon, under fluorescent lights in the precinct's glass conference room, Blake straightened his uniform when the captain announced the new departmental director. He froze. The woman from the rain stepped inside, dry, poised, eyes locked on his. "Good afternoon, officers," she said evenly. "I'm Director Amara Lewis. I'll be reviewing all internal conduct reports starting today." The room went silent. Blake's cigarette taste still lingered in his throat. The morning sky was the color of dull steel, heavy with rain that refused to quit. Officer Blake Turner leaned against his cruiser, tapping the hood in irritation as wipers dragged across the windshield. It was supposed to be an easy shift, routine patrol, quick coffee. Back before noon. Then he saw her. A black sedan glided down Maple Avenue, driver steady, signals clean. Still, something in him twitched, the kind of instinct he'd long stopped questioning. He flashed the lights. The car pulled over immediately. The driver's window lowered with slow precision. The woman inside met his gaze through the drizzle. "Composed, alert. License and registration," Blake said, voice clipped. She handed it over without a word. "Amara Lewis," it read. He looked her over, then the papers, then her again. "Where you headed this early?" "Work," she replied. "I'm due at City Hall." Blake smirked. "In that area, must be some kind of fancy assistant job." Her lips parted. "I'm a consultant." He chuckled under his breath. "Sure, consultant." Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The rain drummed harder, filling the silence between them. "You know why I stopped you?" he asked. "I don't, officer." He leaned closer, letting the power hang between them. "You fit a description. Vehicle like yours was reported stolen last week." Her eyes narrowed. "Reported where?" "Doesn't matter. Step out of the car." The command sliced the air. Blake's partner shifted in the cruiser, watching. Amara hesitated, then opened the door. The pavement splashed under her heels. Rain slicked her blazer. Blake made her stand at the front bumper bag. He asked, in the back seat, "Open it." "Is that necessary?" she said, voice low, measured. He looked at her like she'd broken a rule. "You questioning me?" She didn't move. Her silence stretched thin until Blake snatched the rear door open himself, rifling through her things, files, laptop, umbrella, nothing. When he turned back, she was still standing there, hands at her sides, drenched. A teenager across the street had started recording. Blake saw the phone, jaw tightening. He snapped the bag shut. "You're clean," he muttered. "Next time, drive like you belong here." He tossed her license at her chest. She caught it one-handed, eyes never leaving his. Her voice, quiet but unshakable. "You'll remember me, Officer Turner." Blake scoffed, flicking rain off his jacket. "Yeah, right." But as she got back into her car and drove off, something in her gaze, steady, unblinking, stayed with him longer than he liked. By the time his radio crackled with dispatch chatter, he couldn't shake the chill running down his spine. He didn't know yet that the next time he'd see her, it wouldn't be on the street. It would be in the precinct, and he'd be the one standing to attention. By noon, the rain had stopped, but the storm had only begun. The video hit social media like a live grenade. Shaky footage of Officer Blake Turner ordering a soaked black woman to step out of her car. His tone clipped, patronizing, his smirk unmistakable. The caption read, "Another routine stop, another humiliation." Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Retweeted, dissected, slowed down, replayed. In the precinct, Blake leaned back in his chair as his colleagues crowded around the break room TV. The footage played on repeat, the sound muted. His partner snorted. Man, it's just another day. They'll forget by next week. Blake shrugged, pretending calm. They always do. But his stomach twisted when the chief's door opened and Sergeant O'Donnell barked, "Turner, my office, now." Inside, the air was thick with coffee and unease. "You've gone viral," O'Donnell said, dropping a printed still from the video onto the desk. Amara's drenched face staring back. "You said this was a routine stop." "It was," Blake replied. "No harm done." She got mouthy. "I checked her bag, let her go." The sergeant's jaw tensed. Public relations wants statements. The mayor's office already called. "You made us a headline." Blake forced a grin. "I followed protocol." "Then pray the camera agrees," O'Donnell said. Across town, Amara sat in her living room, blinds drawn, laptop open. The video autoplayed again, her own soaked reflection on the screen. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. "You should sue him," her friend Maya texted. "He can't just humiliate you like that," Amara typed back. "It's not that simple." Her mother's voice called from the kitchen, soft but edged with worry. "Turn it off, baby. Let it go." Amara stared at the paused frame, Blake's face half lit by flashing lights. "He looked at me like I was already guilty," she said quietly, "like he was doing me a favor by letting me breathe." Her mother came closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Then make sure he doesn't get to do it again." The words stayed with her. That night, local news led with the clip. Anchors debated the racial undertones. Commentators traded euphemisms, perception issue, training gap, community tension, but the truth was visible without commentary. Amara's inbox flooded journalists, asking for statements, advocacy groups offering support, trolls spitting venom cloaked in patriotism. She ignored them all. Instead, she opened a separate file, her next project brief. The city had contracted her firm to audit internal police conduct. Her assignment: review precinct performance, assess compliance with equity protocols, recommend reform measures. Her cursor hovered over the heading for a long time before she whispered, "Precinct 7, the same badge on Blake Turner's uniform." At the precinct, Blake's confidence began to erode. His colleagues grew quiet when he entered. The locker room chatter turned cautious. One whispered too loudly, "That's the guy from the clip." He slammed his locker shut, muttering, "People need to stop recording everything." But later, when he checked his phone, even his own brother had texted, "Bro, not a good look." He deleted it, jaw clenched. "I did my job," he told himself aloud. She was stalling, acting suspicious. Yet his mind replayed her last words, "You'll remember me, Officer Turner." They sounded less like defiance now, more like prophecy. 3 days later, an internal memo circulated. Notice: departmental oversight review scheduled Monday. Conduct evaluation to be led by external consultant. Mayor's office initiative. All officers required to attend orientation. Blake scanned it without care. Another bureaucratic drill. But when he reached the name at the bottom, the air left his lungs. Lead consultant, Amara Lewis, ESQ. His coffee spilled across the desk. His partner glanced over. "You good?" Blake wiped the mess with trembling hands. "Yeah," he muttered, voice low. "Just didn't see that coming." He stared at the ink bleeding across the memo until the name blurred into a dark stain. Outside, thunder rolled again, not from weather this time, but from something heavier, inevitable, closing in. The precinct's glass conference room smelled of disinfectant and nerves. Chairs squeaked, papers rustled, and uniforms shifted as the clock crawled toward 9. Officer Blake Turner sat rigid, tapping his boot against the linoleum floor. His reflection in the glass looked more tired than he remembered, shaven, jaw tight, eyes darkened by sleepless nights. Captain Ruiz stood at the front, trying to sound casual. "This is just a standard evaluation. The city wants to ensure we're aligned with the new community accountability measures." No one believed her. The door opened with a soft click. The air stilled. Amara Lewis stepped inside. She wasn't the drenched woman from the roadside anymore. Her charcoal suit was immaculate, hair braided neatly back, heels clicking with precision. She carried a folder under one arm, and authority in her silence. The badge on her visitor lanyard caught the overhead light. Director of Civil Oversight, Division. Blake's stomach tightened. "Good morning," she said, voice even but firm. "I'm here to conduct an independent audit of precinct operations." review conduct files, and oversee disciplinary procedures as mandated by the mayor's office. Her tone was polite but distant. Not a trace of recognition flickered in her expression. Still, Blake could feel it. She knew. She scanned the room slowly, eyes landing on each face for a heartbeat too long, then moved on. When her gaze reached Blake, it stopped steady, unreadable. He swallowed hard. Amara didn't blink. Some of you will be asked to provide statements. Transparency is expected. Cooperation appreciated. Captain Ruiz cleared her throat. Director Lewis will have access to all internal logs. Treat her office as you would mine. Understood, came a low chorus of replies. Blake didn't speak. When the meeting ended, officers filed out, whispering, "She's the woman from the clip, right? Looks like karma. Better watch your tone, Turner." He ignored them, trying to look calm, but inside, his pulse hammered. He lingered behind as the room emptied. Amara gathered her papers, sliding them into a folder marked Conduct Case Files. He stepped forward. Director Lewis paused, looked up, eyes sharp. He hesitated. "We've met before." "Yes," she said, her expression unreadable. Briefly, her voice carried no warmth, no anger, only restraint. He tried a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I imagine you didn't," she replied, "but accountability rarely comes on schedule." Her words landed like a verdict. Blake shifted, lowering his tone. "Look, about that day things got blown out of proportion. You know how it is. Streets are unpredictable." "Unpredictable," Amara repeated softly. "Or just people who look like me." He froze. Her voice stayed low. "Professional. Officer Turner, your personal perspective on that incident isn't part of this review. What matters is the record." He clenched his jaw. "The record doesn't tell the whole story." "No," she said, eyes narrowing slightly, "but it tells enough." She closed her folder and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned once more. "You should prepare your file. Internal Affairs will schedule your interview by Thursday." Blake's throat tightened. "You're making this personal." Her gaze hardened. "I don't have that luxury." Then she was gone. The echo of her heels faded down the hallway, replaced by the low hum of fluorescent lights and Blake's own unsteady breathing. Hours later, Amara sat alone in her temporary borrowed space with peeling paint and a humming radiator. Rain streaked the narrow window. She placed Blake's file in front of her, flipping through years of incident reports. 3 prior complaints. Verbal aggression during stop. Excessive search without probable cause. Unprofessional language toward civilian. Each marked unsubstantiated, each signed off by the same supervisor. Amara's pen tapped the desk. "Patterns," she whispered. "Always patterns." Her phone buzzed. Maya again. "How's it going?" Amara typed back, "He's here," pretending nothing happened. "Then remind him it did," came the reply. She stared at the screen, then set the phone face down. "I will," she murmured. Downstairs. Blake sat in the locker room, scrolling through old news articles, trying to convince himself this was temporary. "She's just another bureaucrat," he muttered. "A politician with a grudge." His partner leaned on the lockers beside him. "Man, you need to chill. She's got backing from the mayor. They're not playing around this time." Blake's laugh was hollow. "You think I'm scared of some PR stunt? Maybe you should be," came the quiet reply. The words stuck for the first time. Blake didn't feel like a cop surrounded by allies. He felt like a man cornered by his own record. That night, as Amara left the precinct, she passed Blake by the exit. He was standing by the vending machine, pretending to check the display. But his reflection flickered in the glass. She didn't slow down, didn't look at him directly, but her voice, calm and precise, reached him anyway. "Officer Turner," she said without turning, "the hardest part of justice is that it doesn't need your consent." Then she walked out into the dark, her umbrella snapping open against the rain. Blake watched her go, a hollow weight settling in his chest, fear dressed as resentment. He realized, too late, that she wasn't here to humiliate him. She was here to uncover him. The rain had dried by morning, but the precinct still felt heavy, like a storm had settled inside the walls. Officer Blake Turner sat in the waiting area of Internal Affairs, staring at the white ceiling tiles, each second stretching like punishment. His palms were damp. A thin man in a gray suit opened the door. "Officer Turner, Director Lewis will see you now." Blake stood, squared his shoulders, and followed him into the small conference room. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. A single recorder sat on the table. Amara Lewis was already there, poised, calm, professional. Her blazer was buttoned, her eyes unreadable. "Good morning, Officer Turner," she said evenly. "Please, have a seat." He sat, the chair creaked beneath him. Amara pressed the record button. "This is a formal review regarding the incident dated March 14th, involving a civilian traffic stop on Maple Avenue. Present, Director Amara Lewis, Officer Blake Turner. Do you acknowledge and consent to recording?" Blake's throat tightened. "Yes, good," she said. "Let's begin." She opened a file, his file, and began. "This isn't the first complaint related to profiling, is it?" He forced a shrug. "People exaggerate. They play the race card when things don't go their way." Her gaze sharpened. 3 prior complaints, all dismissed for lack of evidence, but each involves similar language, demeaning tone, unnecessary search, verbal provocation, consistent pattern. "Do you deny that?" "I did my job. I don't choose who looks suspicious." Amara leaned back slightly, and yet, those suspicions seemed to follow a pattern too. He met her eyes, voice low, defensive. "Are you accusing me of racism?" "I'm identifying a behavioral trend," she replied, calm as glass. "The label is a conclusion, not an accusation." Her composure irritated him more than any insult could have. "Listen," he said, leaning forward. "That woman He stopped, catching himself. You were driving a car that matched a report. I followed procedure." Amara folded her hands. "And did procedure require you to mock her profession? Throw her license at her chest?" His face flushed. "I didn't throw it. It slipped. On camera," she said. "You laughed." Silence filled the room. He looked away. "You don't understand what it's like out there. We deal with hostility every day. Sometimes, yeah, we push back." Her tone softened, not out of sympathy, but clarity. "You confuse accountability with hostility. That's why you're here." He clenched his fists. "You're enjoying this." "I don't enjoy anything about this," she said quietly. "Do you think I wanted to see that video? To watch myself humiliated in front of strangers? To know that the man who did it gets to carry a badge?" Her voice didn't rise, but the force in it pressed the air between them. Blake's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She closed the file. "You'll receive the transcript of this session. Your superiors will determine administrative consequences pending my report." He blinked. "That's it, for now." She stood, signaling the interview was over. He stayed seated, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of seeing him stand first, as she gathered her papers. Her tone shifted, almost reflective. "You think I'm here to ruin you. I'm not. I'm here because the system lets people like you keep thinking nothing's wrong until someone makes it impossible to ignore." Blake finally rose, anger masking embarrassment. "You don't know me." Amara met his glare. "I know exactly what you did." Then she walked out, heels steady, leaving him alone with the hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint hiss of the recorder still spinning. Later that day, Amara met with Captain Ruiz and Internal Affairs Chief Mendoza. The officer's conduct shows a consistent pattern of racially biased language and intimidation, Amara said, sliding a stack of transcripts across the table. "He's not an isolated problem, he's a symptom." Mendoza frowned. "You're suggesting structural bias." "I'm confirming it," she replied, "and documenting every name tied to his protection." Ruiz shifted uncomfortably. "You're making this sound like a witch hunt." Amara looked directly at her. "No, Captain, witch hunts target the powerless. I'm auditing the powerful." That night, Blake drove home in silence. The city blurred past in dull streaks of light. Every horn, every siren felt aimed at him. He parked outside his apartment, sat in the dark for a long time, then finally muttered, "She's not going to break me." But he didn't sound sure. Inside his phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Turner, this is a courtesy notice. Your administrative review has been escalated to the mayor's office for special consideration." He reread it twice, pulse pounding. For the first time, he realized this wasn't about bad luck or misunderstanding. He was trapped in the same system he'd once believed would always protect him. Blake Turner hadn't slept. The blinds were drawn. The air smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. His badge lay on the kitchen counter, next to a bottle of whiskey half gone. The walls of his apartment seemed to shrink with every minute of silence. He opened his laptop, scrolling through news headlines. The video from the traffic stop had resurfaced again, now paired with footage of Amara Lewis walking into City Hall, reporters flashing cameras, civil rights director to oversee police reform. He slammed the laptop shut. "She's not some saint," he muttered. "She's making an example out of me." His phone buzzed. His father. He hesitated. then answered, "Yeah, Blake." The voice was gravelly, stern. "I saw the news. What the hell's going on over there?" "Media garbage," Blake said. "They're twisting it. I did nothing wrong." "Son, they don't run stories like that unless someone messed up. You always had that temper." "I did my job," Blake snapped. "You think I stop people for fun?" She was defensive from the start. She wanted a scene. A pause. "Or maybe she's just tired of being treated like a suspect," his father said quietly. Blake's throat tightened. "You're taking her side now." "I'm telling you to think," his father replied. "You wear that badge. You carry the whole history of what it means. You can't act like it's invisible." Blake ended the call. He poured another drink, stared at the badge gleaming dully in the low light. "They all want me to say I'm a racist," he muttered. "Like that'll fix anything." Across the city, Amara sat in her office surrounded by folders and exhaustion. She'd spent the day in interviews with other civilians, people who'd filed complaints against Blake and his colleagues, each story echoing the same themes: disrespect, humiliation, intimidation. One woman, voice trembling, had said, "I didn't report it because I thought nothing would change." Amara had written the words down, then underlined them twice. Nothing would change. She rubbed her temples. The job wasn't about revenge, it was about breaking the cycle. But lately, even her sense of justice felt heavy. Her assistant knocked lightly. "You should go home, ma'am." Amara looked up. "There's too much left to fix." "Then, fix it tomorrow," the assistant said softly. "Tonight, rest." But Amara didn't move. The image of Blake's eyes, defensive, angry, afraid. Not because she pitied him, but because she recognized what came next. Denial, backlash, deflection. Every system did it before it changed. The next morning, the department held a closed briefing. The chief sat stiffly at the head of the table. "We're under scrutiny," she began. "The mayor expects cooperation. Officer Turner, your review has reached the Oversight Council. You're suspended pending recommendation." Blake's voice cracked through the silence. "Suspended? On what grounds?" "Professional misconduct in violation of department ethics." "That's political," he said bitterly. "You're hanging me to make her look good." The chief's gaze didn't flinch. "We're not hanging you, Blake. We're trying to save the department." Laughter rippled from one end of the room, nervous, hollow. He stood, chair scraping loud against the floor. "You're all cowards. One video, and you turn on your own." Amara, seated at the far end as an observer, spoke quietly. "No one turned on you. You turned away from accountability." Her calm was unbearable. "You think this is justice?" he snapped. "You get humiliated, so you come after my life." She stood slowly. "You think your life is the only one that matters." The words struck like a hammer. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Blake shoved his badge across the table. "Fine. Take it. You'll see what happens when you let politics run the streets." He stormed out, the door slamming hard behind him. That night, alone in his apartment again, Blake sat on the couch, surrounded by silence. The whiskey bottle was gone. His uniform jacket hung over the chair like a ghost. He turned on the TV. Another headline: "Officer suspended amid racial profiling probe." A panel of commentators debated his name. Words like bias and power filled the air. He muted the sound, staring blankly. His phone vibrated again. Another text: "Unknown number. Mr. Turner, your disciplinary hearing is scheduled for Monday. Attendance required." He tossed the phone aside, breathing hard. His reflection stared back from the dark TV screen. Not the proud officer he remembered, but someone cornered, unraveling. In the distance, thunder rumble. He whispered into the silence, as if Amara could hear him. "She's not better than me." But the words rang hollow. Somewhere inside him, he knew the truth. He refused to say out loud. She wasn't trying to destroy him. She was showing him the mirror. And what he saw, staring back, terrified him more than any punishment ever could. City Hall was quiet that afternoon. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the skyline into a wash of gray and steel. Inside, Amara Lewis sat across from the Police Oversight Council, her files open, her tone controlled. She'd been building this case for weeks. Statements, footage, patterns. Every page told the same story. A department convinced it was protecting order while suffocating the people it swore to serve. A voice cut through her thoughts. "Miss Lewis, your report recommends mandatory re-education for all field officers and disciplinary review for Sergeant Turner. Do you believe that's enough?" Amara met the councilman's eyes. "Enough isn't the goal. Accountability is." He frowned. "You're aware the union's preparing a backlash." "I'm aware they already started." she said flatly. The door opened. Blake Turner entered, flanked by his lawyer. He looked thinner, sleep-deprived, a man made of resentment and caffeine. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Amara didn't. The chair spoke. Sergeant Turner, thank you for attending. We'll be reviewing your actions during the March 17th stop involving Director Lewis. You'll have an opportunity to respond. Blake sat down, his jaw locked. My actions were consistent with protocol. Protocol doesn't authorize escalation without threat, the chair replied. She resisted, Blake said. She refused identification. Amara interjected, voice calm. I identified myself twice. You interrupted both times. He glared. You were filming me, trying to provoke me. I was protecting myself. Silence coiled between them, the council observed. Pens poised. Blake leaned forward, voice trembling between anger and exhaustion. You people sit here pretending to understand what it's like out there. Every stop, every second, you're one move from getting killed. And when we react, suddenly we're the villains. Amara's tone didn't rise. Fear doesn't excuse humiliation. Power doesn't erase responsibility. He shook his head. You want perfect cops in an imperfect world. I want human cops in a humane one, she replied. That line silenced the room. The chair cleared his throat. Sergeant Turner, we have body cam footage from your previous 2 stops this month. Both show similar escalation patterns. Blake's lawyer cut in. We object to character framing. This hearing concerns one incident. Amara responded. Patterns define behavior. They reveal what a single event tries to hide. Blake snapped. You think I'm some kind of monster. I didn't hurt you. You humiliated me, she said, and you didn't even see it. He froze, not from guilt yet but from the first crack in his certainty. The chair spoke again. We'll reassess for 10 minutes. Everyone stood. Amara stepped aside, packing her notes. Blake lingered, watching her. Finally, he said, you really believe you're fixing something here? I believe someone has to try, she said without looking up. He walked closer, voice lower now. You think this ends with me? You'll bury one cop, and the next will act the same way. It's in the culture. You can't change that. She met his eyes. Cultures change when denial breaks. He smirked, hollow. Denial. You don't know what it's like to walk streets where everyone hates you. Amara's expression didn't waver. You're right. I only know what it's like to walk streets where people fear you. That hit deeper than he expected. He wanted to reply, to defend himself again, but the words never formed. He saw, for the first time, the quiet exhaustion in her eyes, not anger, not revenge, fatigue, the kind that comes from fighting to be seen as equal. The recess bell chimed. She turned to go. He watched her leave, the sound of her heels fading down the hall. Outside, the rain had stopped. Blake exited the building later that day, coat slung over his arm. Reporters shouted his name. Cameras flashed. Sergeant Turner, do you deny the racial allegations? Are you planning to appeal? He pushed through them in silence, the noise closing in like static. Amara stepped out behind him, heading the other direction. Someone shouted, Director Lewis, any comment on the officer's suspension? She stopped, then said simply, this isn't about one officer. It's about all of us. Then she walked away. Blake stood there, surrounded by microphones he didn't want, realizing she'd just said the one thing he couldn't. He drove for hours that night. Nowhere to go. The city blurred into streaks of red and white light. His radio was off. His thoughts were loud. That he replayed the moment from the council meeting the way she'd looked at him. Not like an enemy, like a mirror he couldn't face. For the first time, he asked himself a question he'd always buried under pride. What if she was right? Not about everything, not about him being evil, but about what the badge had done to him, through him, how fear had turned into power, and power into blindness. He pulled over at an empty gas station. The air was damp, cold. He looked at his reflection in the side mirror. The uniform, the scars, the stubbornness, they all stared back. He whispered, when did I stop seeing people? The question didn't echo. It didn't need to. He knew the answer already. Somewhere between the fear and the authority, he had lost sight of what he was supposed to protect. Across town, Amara sat alone in her apartment, sipping tea gone cold. The city lights blinked beyond the window. Her phone vibrated with messages, congratulations, interviews, requests, but she ignored them. Justice wasn't triumph. It was weight. She thought of Blake not as a villain, but as proof of how deep the fracture ran. This wasn't about one confrontation. It was about the system that made them adversaries before they ever spoke. She closed her eyes, whispering a quiet prayer for clarity, not victory. In the dark reflection of her window, the city looked both fragile and endless, like something that could still be rebuilt if enough people decided to see it clearly. The city was alive again, headlines flashing, podcasts dissecting, protests rising in waves of anger and resolve. Blake Turner's name had become both a symbol and a warning. For the department, it was damage control. For Amara Lewis, it was escalation. Her office overflowed with calls, some supportive, some hateful, her inbox filled with threats disguised as concerned citizen feedback. Yet she didn't stop. Every time she hesitated, she remembered the sidewalk that day, the sound of the cuffs clicking, the eyes that had watched and done nothing. She would not unsee it. At precinct headquarters, Blake sat through his interim reassignment review. It wasn't suspension, not yet, just paperwork, desk duty, observation. They called it procedure. He called it purgatory. Captain Reeves dropped a file on his desk. You're on administrative review until the council finalizes their findings. Stay quiet. Don't talk to the press. Don't talk to Lewis. Blake nodded. Understood. Reeves hesitated. Between us, they're coming for you, Blake. Not just you, maybe the department too. This is political now, Blake muttered. It's always political when it's about race. Reeves stared at him, weary. Maybe. But you gave them ammo. Blake said nothing. The captain left, and silence filled the office, suffocating. He turned on the newsfeed. Amara was speaking on-screen at a civic conference, her tone steady, professional, sharp. We can't talk about reform without accountability. We can't claim equality while denying bias exists. Real justice means looking at the uncomfortable and still choosing to change. Her words cut deeper than accusation. They sounded like truth. Blake shut off the monitor, but the echo stayed. He leaned back in his chair, staring at his badge. The shine was gone, or maybe it had never been there, just reflection. That night, the department group chat lit up with fury. They're throwing us under the bus. Can't even defend ourselves anymore. Guess it's a crime to be white and wear a badge. Blake read every message but didn't type. The tone reminded him of himself months ago, loud, defensive, blind. Someone tagged him. Turner, you started this circus. You better handle it. He stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering, then set the phone down. For the first time, he didn't feel part of their us. 2 days later, he was called to testify again, this time in front of a closed internal affairs panel. Amara was already there. The air between them felt charged, like the pause before thunder. The moderator said, "We're here to review compliance patterns and procedural conduct from both parties. Director Lewis, please begin." Amara stood. This isn't about two people. It's about an entire system that protects bias behind badges. Officers aren't trained to de-escalate. They're trained to dominate. That's not policing, it's control. The moderator turned to Blake. Your response? He hesitated. His lawyer gestured for him to read the prepared statement. He did that instead. He said quietly, "She's right." The room stilled. The lawyer blinked. "Sergeant, no," Blake interrupted. "She's right. We justify too much. We talk about fear like it's armor, but it's just an excuse. I thought I was enforcing order, but I was protecting my own comfort. I didn't see what it cost others." A murmur rippled through the panel. Amara watched him, unsure whether to believe it or to brace for another manipulation. He looked directly at her. "I can't undo what I did, but I can stop pretending it was nothing." The moderator cleared his throat, unsure how to proceed. "That will be noted." Blake sat down again, pulse hammering. He had just dismantled his own defense, and strangely it felt like breathing for the first time in years. Afterward, in the hallway, Amara caught up to him. "You meant that?" she asked quietly. He turned, expression unguarded. "Yeah, you know what it'll cost you." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Finally, something worth the cost." She studied him, still wary, but something in her chest shifted. He wasn't redeemed, not yet, but he was no longer unreachable. "Truth doesn't fix everything," she said. "I know," he replied, "but lies never fixed anything either." For a moment, they just stood there, two people divided by history, linked by consequence. The news broke that evening. Sergeant Turner admits fault in racial misconduct hearing. Civil Rights Division launches full investigation into department practices. The story spread like wildfire. Protesters gathered outside precinct gates. Supporters of Turner flooded online spaces, calling him a traitor. Others called him the first honest cop they'd ever seen. Amara watched the coverage, expression unreadable. One of her colleagues said, "You did it. You broke through." Amara shook her head. Breaking through means there's something left to rebuild. Blake's phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, some furious, some thankful. He turned it off, sat in the dark of his apartment, and thought about everything he'd spent his career defending. A knock came at the door. He hesitated, then opened it. A young black boy stood there, maybe 12, holding a newspaper. "My mom said to tell you, she saw what you said on TV. She said ... Thanks." Blake blinked. "Tell her, I appreciate it." The boy nodded and left. Blake closed the door slowly, leaning against it, breath trembling. For the first time, he didn't feel like the badge defined him. He felt the weight of what it had hidden. Later that night, Amara received a single email from an unknown address. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, not because I got caught, because I finally saw." No name, no signature, but she knew. She sat there, rereading it under the glow of her desk lamp. Then she deleted it, not out of anger, but to remind herself that forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. Still, something eased inside her. Outside, sirens wailed far off in the distance, just sound now, not threat. The city breathed. Morning light crept across the marble floors of City Hall, soft but sharp, slicing through the glass walls of power. Amara Lewis stood before the press, notes in hand, the insignia of the Civil Rights Oversight Commission gleaming behind her. Dozens of cameras stared back. Red lights blinked like unblinking eyes. "Today marks a turning point," she began, voice calm, clear, unflinching. "This investigation has revealed patterns of racial bias and abuse of authority embedded within our city's police force. These aren't isolated mistakes, they're systemic choices, and they end now." A murmur swept through the crowd. Reporters scribbled. Somewhere near the back, Blake Turner watched quietly, cap pulled low, anonymous in the sea of faces. Amara continued, "Effective immediately. Disciplinary actions will proceed against 5 officers. The department will undergo full procedural restructuring under independent supervision. No badge, no uniform, will ever again be beyond scrutiny." Her voice didn't rise, but every word landed like a gavel. Someone shouted a question. "Director Lewis, do you believe justice has been done?" Amara paused, eyes lifting toward the cameras. "Justice is not a moment. It's a maintenance, and it demands we stay awake." That line echoed across every news outlet within hours. Outside, protesters filled the square, chanting, crying, holding signs, both furious and hopeful. Accountability now. Reform the system. Protect, don't persecute. For some, it was vindication. For others, betrayal. Blake stayed near the edge, hands in his pockets. He wasn't there to defend himself. He wasn't sure why he was there at all. Maybe to see what truth looked like when it finally stopped hiding. A young officer recognized him. "Sergeant Turner." "Not anymore," he said quietly. The officer hesitated, uncertain. "I just wanted to say what you did in that hearing that took guts." Blake looked at him, measuring the sincerity. "Then do more than talk. Change how you see." The officer nodded, unsure how. Later, Amara exited the building, exhaustion etched into her face. She'd held composure all morning, but inside, the fatigue felt bone deep. She walked toward her car when she noticed him across the plaza. He didn't move closer, just stood there, rain starting to fall between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The city's noise blurred around them. Chants, traffic, thunder. Finally, she said, "You didn't have to show up." "I did," he said. "Didn't want to hide behind the mess I made." Amara studied him, the man who'd once cuffed her on a public street, the man who'd called her a threat. Now, standing in the rain, he looked stripped of armor, no badge, no entitlement, just a person trying to face his wreckage. "Accountability doesn't erase what happened," she said. "I know," Blake replied, "but maybe it stops it from happening again." She nodded faintly. "If enough people mean it." A beat of silence. Then, she turned to leave. Behind her, Blake called out, voice barely audible over the downpour, "I used to think justice was about punishment. Now, I think it's about sight." Amara didn't look back, but her pace slowed. "Then don't close your eyes again." And she walked on. 2 weeks later, the headlines changed. City implements nationwide policing reform model. Former Officer Turner joins community training initiative. The story had shifted from shame to reconstruction. Amara didn't bask in it. She just kept working policy meetings, oversight reports, listening sessions. Real progress was never loud. It was steady. Blake worked quietly in the background, consulting for bias workshops, standing before new recruits who looked at him like a cautionary tale. He didn't lecture. He told stories about fear, pride, and the blindness power creates. Some listened, some didn't. But at least the silence had cracked. One evening, Amara visited a youth center where community police dialogues were being held. She hadn't planned to stay long, but a familiar voice caught her attention. Blake was speaking to a group of teenagers. We like to think racism's a storm that passes, but it's a climate. It lives in habits, in looks, in silence. The only way to change it is to notice it, especially when it benefits you. A hand went up. Did you ever hate her? The woman who exposed you. Blake smiled faintly. I hated what she showed me about myself. That was harder to face than her. The room went quiet. Amara listened unseen from the doorway. Something inside her, the knot of resentment, fatigue, grief, loosened. She left before he saw her. Some stories didn't need closure. They just needed continuation. Months later, the city square was renamed Unity Plaza. The dedication ceremony drew thousands. Amara stood on stage beside community leaders, activists, and unexpectedly, Blake representing the new training initiative. As the ribbon was cut, applause broke out. Cameras flashed. The moment was symbolic, but it mattered. Blake turned slightly toward her. Never thought I'd be standing here with you. Amara's eyes stayed forward. Neither did I, but standing isn't the point. Changing direction is. He nodded. Guess we both did that. A small smile touched her lips. Guess we did. That night, the news replayed the ceremony, ending with a shot of the two of them, once adversaries, now reluctant allies, framed beneath a banner that read, "Justice begins with awareness." The anchor's voice-over said, "In a city once divided by fear, perhaps the first bridge was built not by forgiveness, but by the courage to see." Amara drove home in silence. The streets were the same, but they didn't feel as heavy. She parked, turned off the headlights, and exhaled. She thought of every battle still ahead, every law, every bias, every silence left unbroken. But for the first time, she believed the city was listening. In her rearview mirror, she saw her own reflection, not victorious, not unscarred, but alive. Outside, rain began again, soft and steady, washing the streets clean enough for new footsteps. A year later, spring returned to the city. The air smelled of wet pavement and renewal, though the scars beneath were still visible if you looked closely enough. Downtown, a mural stretched across the side of the municipal building, faces of community members, officers, and children painted together beneath the words, "We see you." It wasn't a declaration of victory, it was a reminder of vigilance. Amara Lewis stood before it, coat draped over her arm, a folder of reform drafts tucked beneath. She'd been appointed as Deputy Commissioner for Civil Accountability, a title that sounded heavy, but felt lighter than the silence she used to fight. Her assistant approached. "Director, sorry, Commissioner Lewis, reporters are asking if you'll give a statement about the one-year anniversary of the hearings." She smiled faintly. "No statements today. Let the city speak for itself." He nodded and left her there, alone with the mural. She stared at it, at the painted eyes that watched from every corner, and thought of the night she was handcuffed on the curb, the cold, the humiliation, the cameras that had looked through her instead of at her. And then she thought of now, the hearings, the reforms, the long, slow reckoning that followed. Justice hadn't been swift or clean. It had been human, messy, uneven, incomplete, but it had begun. Across the river, Blake Turner stood on the cracked court of the Eastside Youth Program. He wasn't a cop anymore, just Coach Blake to the dozen kids dribbling basketballs under the dim gym lights. He'd traded a badge for a whistle. The weight was different, but the responsibility was the same. "Keep your head up," he called to a boy struggling with the ball. "You can't see the court if you're staring at the floor." The kid grinned, correcting his stance. Blake smiled back, the words echoing deeper than he'd intended. When practice ended, one of the boys lingered. "Coach, my cousin said you used to be a cop. Is that true?" Blake nodded. "Yeah." The boy hesitated. "You quit." Blake looked out the window, where the sunset reflected off the chain-link fence. "No, I had to start over." The boy frowned. "You miss it." He thought for a long moment. "I miss what I thought it was." The boy didn't understand, but nodded anyway, then ran off to join the others. Blake sat on the bench alone, pulling from his bag a folded newspaper, the old headline from a year ago. Director Lewis confronts racist officer, the city divides. He traced the print, then folded it again, slower this time. It no longer stung like accusation. It felt like a map, where he'd been, what he'd had to lose to see clearly. That night, a community forum was held at the new Unity Plaza. The turnout was enormous. Activists, officers, citizens, students. Amara took the podium, scanning the faces. Reform, she began, isn't about replacing people. It's about replacing denial. Change doesn't start with a policy. It starts with honesty. Applause. She let it fade before continuing. This city learned something hard this year, that silence is also a choice, and we've decided not to choose it anymore. She looked up then, and caught sight of him near the back of the crowd. Blake, standing quietly, hands clasped, listening. Their eyes met briefly. He nodded once, respectfully. She returned it. Nothing more needed saying. The crowd clapped louder, mistaking the pause for emphasis. Bok for her. It was something deeper, the full circle of acknowledgement without erasure. After the event, she found him standing by the mural, now lit by floodlights. You still following my speeches? She said dryly. He smirked, still cleaning up after them. A small silence settled, the kind that didn't feel heavy anymore. He gestured toward the painted faces. You ever think we'll actually get there? She looked up. Not in one lifetime, but maybe in enough of them. He nodded slowly. Guess that's better than nothing. She turned to him. It's better than pretending. A faint smile crossed his face. You haven't changed. Her eyes softened. Neither have you. You're just finally aware of it. He chuckled quietly. Fair enough. They stood side by side, watching a group of teenagers stop to take photos with the mural, laughing, pointing at the words, "We see you," Amara said softly. That's all I ever wanted. Blake asked, to be seen. No, she said, for people to see each other. The city clock struck 9. Somewhere, a patrol car passed by, lights off, slow.com. The night was peaceful. Amara turned to leave. Take care of those kids, Blake replied. Take care of the system that made me. She paused, then said, that's the plan. As she walked away, her silhouette disappeared into the glow of the plaza lights. Blake watched until she was gone. Later, he stood before the mural again. The rain began, faint and steady, running down the painted faces like tears. He reached out, pressing a hand to the wall, not to apologize, not to cleanse, just to remember. He whispered, almost to himself, seeing's the easy part, changing's the work. Then he turned and walked away, coat collar up against the drizzle. The faint sound of city traffic filling the night. Across town, Amara sat by her window, city lights blinking beyond. She opened her notebook, the one from her first day as director. On the final page, she wrote, "Justice is not a verdict. It's a mirror that must never fog." She closed it gently. Outside, thunder rumbled far off. Not a warning this time, but a rhythm. A new season was beginning.